right? That's when we can at our best. That's sometimes we do that as politicians, when are blessed and with the opportunity to serve, and sometimes we do that as doctors. Dr. Prim was exemplary in that regard, and sometimes we do that as journalists and filmmakers.
Right.
So all of us have sort of a doctoring role to play with the privilege we have to serve or to be a part of a.
Yeah, as I was telling you that, when I was sort of collecting signatures for Cordell, one of the ladies that I was walking with, she knew the area better than I did, and she pointed out that building to me, not very far from the Lincoln Public Housing, yeah. And she, very fondly, she spoke about the work that this gentleman did.
No, he was a forerunner.
Yeah, quite before his time.
Yes.
So to speak. And the place still stands, quite representative of his work.
Okay.
So now you're running in the marathon on Sunday. Actually, tomorrow.
Let me put it this way. I've enrolled into the marathon, and I've been accepted, and my number is 1979.
1979.
That was so I'm in the marathon, and I picked up my what they call it, the shirt, my number, and so I'm in.
Yeah. So you're running with these group of.
Actually, the group is from a program that Dr. Prim actually founded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so we will be. I'll be wearing the shirt. I think this is it. Ding!
Okay. Run for your life.
Odyssey House.
Odyssey House. So where's the substance abuse houses at this time?
Odyssey House. I don't know. Let me double check something here. I don't know exactly where they are. It should be on here somewhere.
Is that near the Lincoln houses?
I don't know. Let me look. Let me just look. Let's see. ARTC was over there on Park Avenue, as I remember, 18 something, 1880, something like that. But they were the major substance abuse, one of the major substance abuse programs that were probably in the vanguard of the programs, not only for this community, but maybe even for the country. And at that time, the unfortunate drug of choice was heroin, pre-crack. In fact, when crack came out, people wished we could go back to heroin, because crack, as you heard, was whack.
Wow.
And it was really incredible. But
it was destroying the brain faster than.
Oh, more! It was much more difficult even for people. It seemed to get off of it, and so, and heroin was more of a sedative type. People who got high on heroin tended to nod and just chill out.
Okay.
Crack was whack. People were, aggressive.
Doing really.
Yeah, they were. It was more of an up kind of high.
Make you feel like you're Superman.
Yeah, and you've heard about what some of the folks who were called crackheads used to do in terms of those super outrageous physical activities. But heroin had its extraordinary acts as well, because when people were on heroin, they didn't do crazy things like that, because heroin is a nod and kind of, they would be like this,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the drive to get it, the addiction and the pain coming from not having it, had them doing extraordinary things to get money.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like for instance, you noticed that there was a period in which everybody had to get gates on their windows, especially if they were fire escapes. That was free crack. That was that I know that from the heroin era, because the junkies would, do all kind of acrobatics to get into your apartment, even if So the crack was a much more aggressive kind of drug. But he was in that whole period. He was one of the forerunners that recognized that it wasn't simply a matter of criminalizing or holding in disdain addicts. That they were human beings, that we as a community, as a society, had a responsibility for the fact that drugs were in the community to begin with, and secondly, a responsibility to create opportunities for them to overcome their addictions.
Mm-hmm.
So that was sort of the era of the development of substance abuse treatment programs.
Yeah, I think that.
This sort of is his. He passed.
Right.
And this is a little bit of this here is his obituary, which gives you some sense of the kind of work that he did, and is also his through training and whatnot. So,
Where rediscovering lives.
right. So this is his work, and they run every year. They have a team every year.
Okay.
And for the last few years, they've allowed me to run with them as part of their team. And
Let's open the back of it. Let's see what's in the back.
on the back, we have a message:
Life.
running for your life, turning addicts into athletes. Turning addicts into athletes. We're at Odyssey House, where recovery lives and thrives. So they've been around, and they've been in the forefront of saving lives, returning lives to, people that want to be productive, and but you know what?
And how many years have you run with him?
Oh, I don't know. I have to double check.
Okay, so you've been running with him for a
For a
while
while,
then.
for a few years. I think the last 3 or 4 years, last year, yeah, maybe the last 3 or 4 years.
And you've been running for how long?
Too long, probably.
Oh, really? So you've always been, okay.
I've been running, I don't know how many times I've run a marathon.
That's good.
Yeah. I have, I think I'm in double figures.
Oh, okay. That speaks,
That's but I have to, yeah.
that's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's very good. Yeah. So why do you run? They're running for a purpose.
We all run for a purpose. My purpose is multifaceted, I guess. I'm wearing this T-shirt. That's one of my purposes. Their T-shirt, Odyssey House's T-shirt, helping to turn addicts into athletes, or in other words, productive citizens, healthy. And my motto is: your health is your wealth.
Right.
So clearly, that's one of my personal motivations, as well as I'm pretty sure the motivation behind the work that the people do at Odyssey House, and obviously Dr. Prim, as a medical professional, has also been about making sure that people live healthy lives, and recognizing the challenges that sometimes distract us or undermine our intention to live healthy lives. So this is one of his legacies, this program called Odyssey House.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh-huh. So do you think that the present administration is continuing his work the way that he would have liked to be continued?
Well, I think that there's room for improvement, needless to say, but I think that there is an appreciation of this challenge, and there is efforts being made to meet the challenge. And I think that if I get the opportunity, I would love to join the president of this administration, whichever one happens to be there when I'm there, along with folks from the legacy of Dr. Prim, including people at Reality House and the other such programs, to help them understand the importance of the work that he's done, which has been to some extent supported. So it's not as if there's been a blind eye turned to his work and to his into the need, but it's not a need that has yet been overcome.
Okay.
So we shall overcome.
Okay.
We're still saying,
Mhm.
and I think that towards that end, we can do some things on the federal level, following, frankly, some of what has already been done, because this country has tended to provide a focus on this problem.
Mhm. Now you said that the president that's coming in the next election, or the present one, President
Present
Obama.
and future, and
Okay.
all,
Now, that
as
brings me
well
to
as
the question.
past.
You're talking about presidents, working with the presidents. You're running for Congress.
Yes, yes.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Is that something that you have been contemplating for a while now, or is it something that you see a need in a particular area in your community? Because I know your community is something that is near and dear to your heart. That you feel that being in that position as a congressman, you're able to.
Well, it's a great honor to have any position, and I've learned that in the most humble of ways, that is to say, as long as I've had the privilege of representing this neighborhood, starting actually in 1979, which coincidentally happens to be my number for
Okay.
for the marathon.
For the marathon, okay.
As a Democratic district leader in the neighborhood, which is not an elected, it's an elected position, but not as a public elected official. It's a party elected official. It's not like a council person or an assembly person or a senator or, let's say, a congressperson. But nevertheless, it's a political position that enables you to engage the political process, to engage city and other public agencies, to provide support and resources for the neighborhood. And at that time, the neighborhood was really in a rage around substance abuse. We were coming, we're dealing with the heroin epidemic, and then after that, epidemics of other substance abuses like crack.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
So obviously, that is an area that we cannot assume is over. Like, we still are hearing about other exotic manifestations, if you will, or demonic manifestations, if you will, of drugs that are plaguing our neighborhood, and others who are making a great deal of money.
Right. Did you find that? Did you find this new drug, this new that's entering the market? Do you see that here in Harlem?
Yeah, we've had our problems with it. As a matter of fact, unfortunately, recently there was a shooting in the neighborhood which seems to be attributed to gang fighting around whose territory is entitled to, who's entitled in a certain territory to sell it. Not only are we seeing it in terms of this new exotic, seasoned, so to speak, or poisoned, so to speak, marijuana, but we're also seeing it in terms of the proliferation of pistols, guns.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, my chief of staff, Cordell, as you know, walked upon such an incident this past week at the point at which maybe the shooting had just about ended, and the dead who were on the ground, and obviously it had to do with that kind of activity. So we have a situation in which we keep seeing this cropping up of exotic, dangerous, illegal substances in our neighborhoods.
So it's really moved to another level of destruction of lives. It's not people overdosing.
Well, we have not simply a proliferation of so-called drugs, but most dangerously, the greatest dangerous manifestation now is the proliferation of guns.
The guns, yeah.
The guns. When I grew up, the young people of this day, at best, had what we called zip guns, and or their fists.
Oh, okay.
Okay. The bad guys had the zip guns,
Okay.
which were handmade guns.
Oh, those are, okay.
Handmade, but
Made out of wood.
well, I won't go into all the details of it because I don't want to encourage anything. I know exactly how to make it.
Okay.
I can tell you that from experience. But the point I'm simply making, though, is that we have the weapons, the artillery, so to speak, and the poison that's being sold, and so we have markets, unofficial but nevertheless highly regarded markets of trafficking of a product, illegal, but nevertheless allowed by the powers that be, so to speak, that has been very, very dangerous right through here. Now, there's been some efforts to crack down on it. We all have a role to play, but it just seems that it's a policing matter that seems to be overwhelming the police or underwhelming them, so to speak, because either they can't handle it or they refuse to handle it. There used to be a notion called benign neglect.
Right.
I don't know if we're seeing that again.
So do you, Governor de Blasio.
Governor Cuomo, Mayor de Blasio.
No, the mayor.
De Blasio.
He there was a legislation just passed about that in the past few weeks.
And what is the legislation?
That I think those persons found selling it or marketing it will be, fined, a hefty fine. Do you think that's going to have an effect on?
I don't think there's any magic bullet, if you will, so to speak. I think easy solutions create problems. You understand?
Okay.
So I think that we have to, obviously deal with it in terms of the proliferation of these weapons. That's very, very important because these products are sold in an armed weapon way. When one comes with the other, and usually the weapon brings the other. You understand? You can't do one. You don't do it without that. So that's number one. Number two, there's also, unfortunately, we have to create a situation in which it doesn't, certain communities have a proliferation and other communities don't. People come into certain communities to get, but in other communities, you can't go in there to get it.
Right.
They wouldn't even. They don't. It's not allowed. So policing is a big part of the challenge. We have to create a way that our policing can more effectively prevent. Not just see what we're in the process of doing is getting rid of that which has already infiltrated, invaded, overwhelmed the community. So, if you've ever had any kind of infestation in your home, rats, rodents, or anything of the like,
it takes a while to get rid of them.
The infestation reminds us that prevention,
true,
right, is the best medicine.
So that's one of the problems.
And so what happens is we use that medicine some places, but it's not used in other places. So prevention here and non-prevention, maybe invitation over here. You want to, don't do it here, but don't do it here either. Blink, wink, wink.
Not good.
You understand? So it's allowed. And it puts on us a great struggle to challenge it and to get rid of it, to prevent it.
So do you see are y'all doing anything in the Senate or the Assembly? Is anything happening on that level to go after the manufacturer? Because there's someone manufacturing that stuff.
I think that there are obviously ongoing efforts towards that end. The question becomes, how effective? Clearly, we're not effective enough.
Let's talk about something else that other things dear to your heart. We talked about the prison reform. You had a radio show on that.
Behind the Walls
Behind
is what
the
it used to
Walls,
be called.
yeah. Is that
and
still going
BAI.
on?
Well, there changes dramatically that have taken place at BAI in terms of their programming and their budgeting, and so our program has been put on hold temporarily. We are looking for a new home, a new venue to use it, but it was very valuable in terms of addressing concerns like what we are discussing now, and that's just in terms of prisons per se and what's happening in that regard. But just the whole general social service needs and other kinds of challenges, socioeconomic challenges that communities are going through that result in being behind the walls. So, and sometimes when we did our show, it almost seemed as if we were not simply talking about the behind the walls, like on Rikers Island or Attica or some other kind of facility, but really behind the walls where we live. You understand, in terms of the community feeling sometimes as if they were imprisoned by all of these challenges that are crippling.
But I think that your program has opened the door to what is happening today. Look at what happened at Rikers Island. There been some improvement there, or they have a program in place to bring about some improvement in that area.
Eddie Ellis was the founder of this program, so to speak, in that he had a show that focused on criminal justice issues and offered us some time to do our version on every fourth Saturday of the month. And I want to give tribute to him. He's no longer with us, but for many, he was an ex-convict. He spent a lot of time in prison, and he came back to the community and dedicated himself to addressing those sort of issues. And he did that eloquently on his own show and allowed us to be a part of that show or have our own version of that show. And so we did, our focus was on those same kind of issues.
Right. I think you also, one of the shows I listened to, you also addressed some of the issues that family members had of getting to visit their loved ones behind the walls.
Especially those of families that are in the New York City area. Can you hold on one moment?
Right.
They don't. It's not allowed. So policing is a big part of the challenge. We have to create a way that our policing can more effectively prevent, not just see. What we're in the process of doing is getting rid of that which has already infiltrated, invaded, overwhelmed the community. So, you know, if you've ever had any kind of infestation in your home, rats, rodents, or anything of the like,
it takes a while to get rid of them.
You know, the infestation reminds us that prevention,
true,
right, is the best medicine.
So that's one of the
And
problems.
so what happens is we use that medicine some places, but it's not used in other places. So prevention here and non-prevention, maybe invitation over here. You want to, you know, don't do it here, but don't do it here either. Blink, wink, wink.
Not good.
You understand? So it's allowed. And it puts on us a great struggle to challenge it and to get rid of it, to prevent it.
So do you see, are y'all doing anything in the Senate or the Assembly? Is anything happening on that level to go after the manufacturer? Because there's someone manufacturing that stuff.
I think that there are obviously ongoing efforts towards that end. The question becomes, you know, how effective. Clearly, we're not effective enough.
Let's talk about something else, that other thing that's dear to your heart. You would be talking about the prison reform. You had a radio show on that.
Behind the Walls is
Behind
what
the
it used to
Walls,
be called.
yeah. Is that
And
still going
BAI.
on?
Well, you know, there changes dramatically that have taken place at BAI in terms of their programming and their budgeting, and so our program has been put on hold temporarily. We are looking for a new home, a new venue to use it, but it was very valuable in terms of addressing concerns like what we are discussing now, and that's just in terms of prisons per se and what's happening in that regard, but just the whole general social service needs and other kinds of challenges, socioeconomic challenges that communities are going through that result in being behind the walls. So, and sometimes when we did our show, it almost seemed as if we were not simply talking about the behind the walls, like on Rikers Island or Attica or some other kind of facility, but really behind the walls where we live. You understand, in terms of the community feeling sometimes as if they were imprisoned by all of these challenges that are crippling.
But I think that your program has opened the door to what is happening today. I mean, look at what happened at Rikers Island. There been some improvement there, or they have a program in place to bring about some improvement in that area.
Eddie Ellis was the founder of this program, so to speak, in that you know, he had a show that focused on criminal justice issues and offered us some time to do our version for on every fourth Saturday of the month. And I want to give tribute to him. He's no longer with us, but you know, for many, you know, he was an ex-convict. He spent a lot of time in prison, and he came back to the community and dedicated himself to addressing those sort of issues. And he did that eloquently on his own show and allowed us to be a part of that show or have our own version of that show. And so we did, our focus was on those same kind of issues.
Right. I think you also, one of the shows I listened to, you also addressed some of the issues that family members had of getting to visit their loved ones behind the walls.
Especially those of families that are in the New York City area.
Now, how do you find that, I was reading something that the voters have declined, the voting numbers have declined.
I don't know.
How do you think you can increase those numbers to be in a better position to be successful in this?
I think that the numbers are what they are. Let's assume that they've declined. That therefore will be the numbers needed to win, whatever's left. Towards that end, I would imagine that there will be some slight percentage of voters, numbers that will increase. But I don't think a significant increase in those numbers will take place. On one hand. On the other hand, at least for the primary. On the other hand, there may be some voter registration activity that'll take place, significant voter registration, more significant activity taking place after the primary, because generally towards the general election you see a lot more voter registration activity.
Okay.
But the analysis that we use is not based on projected increases in registration, but on what's the reality now.
Okay, I see, gotcha.
I can't say, oh, I'm going to have to register 10 more people if I'm going to win, or 1,000 more people if I'm going to win. I mean, I should do registration, but the analysis has to be based to some extent on what exists now, and what is it that you think you've done up till now that makes people encourage you to run.
That brings us to the next question. What have you done? I mean, I know you've done a lot of in the community that is directly to the individual. But what else do you plan to do?
Well, we passed some. I'm not quite sure what that means directly to an individual. Most of us.
Like a broad.
Let me finish. There are individualized things that we do, like what we might call constituent services, where individuals come in, or groups of individual families, whatever, come in, and we serve them in terms of their specific needs. So that's individuals that we serve, or families that we serve. Constituent services is what we generally call it. And we've been very rich in terms of having a very good staff and a very good outreach towards that end, a very open office that people feel comfortable coming to and asking about their various problems. And then as legislators that generally operate in a legislative body, let's say in this case Albany as a state senator, or let's say in the past New York City as at the city council as a city council member, or let's say in the future in Washington as a congressperson. There we tend to also focus on legislation, and that legislation sometimes is in terms of bills that provide opportunities, and or in terms of budgets that fund programs or fund services, or maybe even some cases cut the funding for services or cut the programs that may exist depending upon a variety of different reasons. Sometimes it's, but so that's the way we generally operate. So when it comes to individuals, we could never really quantify how many individuals we address. I mean, we have a pretty rigorous, effective constituent services operation, and we have a lot of people coming up for help. But that doesn't measure all that we help. When you take a bill, let's say that deals with solitary confinement, yes, the immediate family that comes to us and talks about their loved one that may be in solitary confinement suffering and joins us in our hearing or in our advocacy to end solitary confinement, then we know that that will touch more than an individual.
Right.
It will end a policy, a practice that will never, ever again result in people being subjected to torturous conditions, even if they're guilty of a crime. It would take the inhumanity out of incarceration and the justice system. So we believe that effectively we probably are more influential when we have policy in terms of laws that get passed and address issues like whether it be solitary confinement or affordable housing or any number of areas that we know in this community and other communities, such policies need to be legislated, signed into law, and implemented because it tends to affect more people.
Right.
Now, our constituent services operation tends to be more individualized as opposed to policy that has a statewide, very often, impact, as opposed to a neighborhood impact. The constituent services stuff tends to be more neighborhood-oriented. Policy stuff may come out of a need that a neighborhood has, but has broader legislative intent. So if you get a solitary confinement bill passed, it won't just affect my constituents. Everybody in the state of New York will have that law to guide how their prison system is operating. And so, that's sort of the way it tends to operate, and obviously doing that on a congressional level allows you to be even more impactful, because very often federal legislation has an impact on what you can even do on a state and local level.
Right. Has there been any movement in the Senate or the Assembly about solitary confinement? Has there been any action?
Now you're talking about another important challenge, which is the legislative process. There has been some movement in the assembly side of the state legislature, but we've had not much movement in the Senate side. And in that regard, you have to understand a little bit about what we might call legislative politics, or how legislative bodies do their business. And generally, they do their business in terms of majorities. Okay. So if you have a majority that favors a certain way, then that way is represented in legislation that gets passed, and very often has a great potential of becoming the law, or has some potential of becoming the law, because at least you have one foot,
right? Some action
step. But if on the other hand, the other legislative body, which is the Senate in this case, does not pass that, then the legislation is not going to move forward to the desk of the governor, who has to ultimately sign off on it and then implement it in terms of the law. Now, so in New York State, you have an assembly that's, let's say, numerically superior in terms of Democrats. So they are in the leadership of proposing and effectively passing legislation out of their body. Similar legislation that may be in the Senate will have to have the support to move it forward, such that if it comes out of the Senate, then you have a bill that both houses have passed that goes on to the desk of the governor, who then ultimately has the opportunity to sign it or veto it. Unfortunately, very often, especially with certain type of what we might call progressive legislation, like let's say the solitary confinement legislation, you won't get that passed out of the Senate because it is, for the most part, run by Republicans who have a different perspective on criminal justice issues versus the more progressive perspective that we have, that this bill represents. And therefore, while it may be passed in one house, it's not going to be passed in the other house, and therefore it goes nowhere near the governor, who we, can't be sure even under those circumstances whether or not he actually supports it either. Because in some cases the governor still can say, well, even if you do pass it, I'm not signing it.
Right.
But you don't have a snowball's chance in hell if you can't get it out of both houses. And so much of the kind of legislation, like we call progressive/liberal legislation, that you're talking about would be stifled from the get-go because it can't get out of the Senate, because the Senate is dominated by Republicans, and they're not passing, or they have not historically passed that type of legislation.
That brings me to my last question.
Now,
and I want to
similarly,
thank you.
that dynamic takes place when we talk about budgets, because you have the legislation, which is the policy, and budgets, which pay for the programs that maybe the policy creates. And they dominate the budget process in the Assembly, but the Republicans dominate it in the Senate. So again, as per the negotiations, very often what might be considered a progressive Democratic agenda might not be supported. And so the kind of legislation from a perspective of the budget legislation that goes to the governor then ultimately has to be signed by the governor. He can send it back, any piece of legislation back, and say, this is what I'd like. That does not mean he can get it. Because each of us as legislative bodies is independent. So while ultimately the governor is the governor, he doesn't have the dictatorial authority to decide what gets passed by the legislators. So that's the nature of our democracy, which I'm not criticizing. I think, in fact, it's a wonderful thing. It's just that for those of us like myself who are Democrats in the Senate, we're somewhat frustrated because of the fact that we don't have a majority.
Right. So let me ask you, although it's moving, it has some movement within that group, and it might not reach the governor's desk, the fact that it's moving among...
It's not, it may move, well, I'm not...
Some action within either the Assembly or the Senate, or let's say the Senate, the Assembly, which is the majority of Democrats, that might...
It has some life in one house.
Right. Okay.
But you need life in two houses for it to move towards the government.
But then the fact that it's there
is
and it hasn't moved, in the successful line, the fact that it's some movement there, we can wait for the next election, and and if the Senate gets the majority of Democrats,
then
there is that possibility that
it's a new ball game then.
okay, but you don't.
But otherwise, we're playing the same ball game called stalemate.
Right, but you don't have to start from A. You're probably at a point D, moving forward.
I guess you could look at it that way. The bottom line is this, though, is what you're saying is it can come out of one house, but it can't come out of the other house.
Right.
And so you're at zero. Okay?
You're zero.
You can't go,
This term.
well, this term, until you get into a place where either those who are in the majority, let's say Republican, are converted policy-wise to support that, or they are replaced with a Democratic majority.
Senator Perkins is running for Congress.
Yes.
What changes would you like to have Senator Perkins address or bring to his attention?
Well,
You have a project you just brought to my attention.
well, I just brought a project to his attention in that I'm a manager for Community Green Energy, and we're solar panel. We put solar panels on nonprofit organizations. I think that what we need in the community, one, jobs. We need training. A lot of the youths and the adults, they need to be trained in the right field.
Is the field that you're in, you think?
Well, yes, too, but
from that
also
point of view?
yes, but also computer programming, because I'm also part of Silicon Harlem.
Okay.
And
What is Silicon Valley?
Silicon Harlem, we are a network of computer programmers, and we're trying to make Harlem, galvanize Harlem into a tech hub. And what Bruce and I'm one of the original first members of Silicon Harlem, so what Bruce and Clayton are doing, what they have done, we've had congressional support from Congressman Rangel. Gail Brewer has been supportive. We've had a number of conferences, and it's a major network.
So where are y'all located? When do y'all meet?
Well, usually we meet at the Mist on 116th Street, and when is the next meeting? I think the next meeting. I'll have to get back to you
Okay,
on
good.
that.
I'd like to be able to attend. Yeah.
Please do. And what we want to do at our church as well is that we want to create, have an annex for Silicon Harlem, and we're going to be putting in computers so that we can train people in JavaScript and C++ and app development and designing apps.
So in terms of the churches, how close are you to creating that kind of network that you're talking about?
Very close.
Okay. Give us an idea
Very
of what
close.
that is.
Well, I'm on a trustee at Greater Hood, and I'm a trustee of the Greater Hood, and my pastor, Reverend Perry, has been very receptive for new ideas.
Are there other churches joining up with
Well, we have a network in our district. We have 35 churches within our region, district region, and
they all more or less on the same page in terms of this project?
yes, but no, because what we're going to do is that once we do our case study, and we know how it is, they only believe it when they see it successful.
So you have to launch it
Yes.
as a model,
Yes.
as an example,
Yes,
and then
exactly.
you
And
gotta
then
convince folks to get on
and
board.
it's going to happen. And I have faith in the Lord that it's going to happen because everything is in the right place.
Faith in the Lord is excellent. What about dollars and cents?
Dollars
You
and
have-
cents,
you
yes.
have- Y'all have the money to
Yes,
to
we
back
do.
up the faith?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, because we're not asking for pennies. We have money behind us.
Okay.
And
So what does government do to help?
government do to help?
Yeah, how can government, like state government, for instance, or congressional level, you said the Congressman Rangel
Has
at
been
some point
supportive
was
for,
supportive. What has he done that, or what else can a congressperson do that can be helpful?
I would like to think about that. a
Okay,
little
no
bit.
problem, good, yeah. But let
because-
me know, because we're heading in that direction.
And I would like to be on board with you, Senator Perkins, definitely.
No, you're going to be driving the board.
Yeah, okay. I'm looking
You're
forward.
not gonna be in the
However I
back
can,
seat. You'll be in the front seat.
however I can be of service.
Okay.
Please do.
Good luck, man.
And
Thanks,
I'm-
City. the beacon that it is in terms of not only living, growing up, being educated, doing well, and giving back.
And staying here.
And staying
I'm
here.
staying here. When I say when I die, it's going to be on New York concrete.
And he's at the PAL in Harlem on Thanksgiving,
Wonderful place to be.
enjoying the turkey.
Thank you. Thank you.
Talking turkey too.
Absolutely. Thank you, buddy.
Minimum wage, living wage. Well, it can happen on a local level as well in terms of the city council. We just have to fight to get a wage, a living wage, not a minimum wage, a living wage, which is significantly more. It is calculated in terms of what does it take to live in a place like New York City. Living wages vary depending upon the cost of living in different places. So a minimum wage in New York, a national minimum wage for a place like New York, it doesn't buy enough. You understand? So we have to calculate a wage for New York City and New York State that's in line with what it costs to live realistically out of poverty. Not in poverty, out of poverty.
How much?
Locally or statewide?
Well, you know, all of this requires effort. You know, so it's not like instant rice or instant grits. You know, it's not a sprint. It's more like a marathon. It's work that has to be done, coalitions that have to be built, educating the public, evolving the public. What you're doing now, as you use it and get people more familiar with it. In fact, they can call my office at 212-222-7315. I'm located at the Adam Clayton Powell Jr. State Office Building at 163 West 125th Street on the 9th floor. By all means, come one, come all. We're here to serve, and we look forward to talking with you and hearing from you how best we can do this job that you've given us the opportunity to do. Thank you so much.
My last question, Senator.
You had your last question. How many last questions? It's like
What's
the
your stand on the gun law?
the gun law. Shoot 'em. No, obviously we have a strong position with respect to gun control and making sure that guns are not in the wrong hands, and sometimes that even includes not in the wrong hands of the police, because sometimes there are problems with how they use guns as well. So we cannot do enough to protect ourselves from the misuse and the free availability of guns. Hey, Corey Wise, Central Park 5, ladies and gentlemen, are live here at the PLL on Manhattan Avenue and 119th Street. We're celebrating Thanksgiving, and there's a reason for us from this community to be thankful, because having suffered the Donald Trump curse of being convicted for a crime that he did not commit. Some of you may know him as one of the Central Park 5 who had to serve so many years for an injustice that he did not commit.
14 years, 8 months.
8 months. And he's back doing well, not only for himself, but also for the community. He is serving food and in any other way that he can, not just on Thanksgiving, but every opportunity that's available, he wants to be a part of as it relates to the community.
Thank you.
Corey Wise, Corey Wise.
Thank you very much.
Another reason for us to be thankful that the Central Park 5 are not in jail and that Donald Trump turned out to be a liar.
I'd say the Perkins Board, thank you for your
No, one more question. I have a question.
Okay.
How many more questions do you have? How many more questions are you going to
I
have?
have one more question.
Cut. No more questions.
What's your question? Hold my film. I'm with the legendary Bill.
Seen that boat. You're from the
You don't know how to
Bronx,
count.
you're from Brooklyn. I have a question for you. Senator Perkins is running for Congress. If you were in this community in Harlem, what would you like to ask Senator Perkins? What changes?
He
would you
already
like-
did. Where's the
Minimum wage.
seconds? Where's the seconds?
Minimum wage to go
Oh,
up.
minimum wage, very good.
I need a job.
Living wage.
I'm going on too many interviews. Nobody's calling me. Yeah, I'm going on a lot of interviews.
But you in the Bronx, you should come by the office.
What office?
My office.
What's that?
It's the state building on 25th.
Yeah.
Oh man, like 100 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never met a senator.
Senator Ray Perkins, right?
Senator Perkins, I have
Bill,
a question
not Ray.
for you.
Bill
You have a question for me?
Yes.
I don't have the answer.
Michael mentioned that he's looking for you say minimum wage.
Minimum wage to
He's
go
looking for
up.
a job. But I
I'm
told him
gonna
what he
get a
wants.
job, but-
What we want him to have is a living wage. A living wage is more than a minimum wage.
I
So
understand.
A minimum wage allows you to live at the minimum.
Uh-huh.
A living wage allows you to live
Going on Big B.
Consider a living wage.
at least $15 an hour.
That's right.
Okay. And has that been introduced?
But you know, excuse me.
Has that been introduced?
We have legislation that's been introduced, and obviously it hasn't quite yet been passed. But we're building some momentum, and hopefully when we get back into the upcoming session, something will happen in a positive way.
So I'm sure that your constituents will be watching very closely. to
Oh, without a
see-
doubt. In fact, we're going to be busting them up there so not only can they watch, they can participate at the sessions and be visible and present and lobby the various elected officials and have them sign petitions and so on and so forth. So it's a movement, and so we look forward to not only my constituents but constituents from all around the state that are interested in seeing working people get a living wage.